This episode is brought to you by Lumina Growth Lab. At Lumina, we help professional learning and development companies who are struggling with predictable lead flow, a sniper approach to attracting the ideal clients, and a system that qualifies leads so they can have a smoother sales process, finally have scalability, and ultimately take their business to the next level. Most of the time, our clients come to us frustrated because nothing seems to work outside of word of mouth and referral based lead generation. But with the right strategy and support, they're able to confidently add new channels of lead generation, leading to a packed pipeline that creates sustainable revenue and year over year growth for cheaper than ever before because of the use of AI technologies. If that sounds like you or someone you know, connect with me on LinkedIn and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about unlocking your business's potential. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Marketing Matrix. I'm your host, Lisanne Murphy, and today I am joined by the wonderful and talented John Thackston. John, thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
Thanks for having us. I'm excited to be here.
Guys, I had the opportunity to meet John, and I am so excited for you to hear about his story and what he and his family's company is doing in the world. They are legit and they are making moves in the industry, and so I'm really excited to have this conversation today. So before I hand over the mic, I want to introduce him, and then we'll get going with our conversation. So John Thackston is CEO and co-founder of Soar Performance Group. Soar helps B2B organizations succeed in sales and customer success through a focus on customer value. John is passionate about helping organizations build the capabilities they need to effectively engage, win, and grow prospects and customers. In his free time, he enjoys spending time with his family, golf, fishing, UGA football, go dogs, and Atlanta sports. So again, John, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me, and go dogs.
Go dogs, yes. And I don't know if listeners know this, but I went to middle school and high school in Atlanta, Georgia, and so the majority of my friends went to UGA. They either went to Tech or to the University of Georgia. And so, yeah, I grew up very much indoctrinated that the dogs are where it's at. So anyway, I'm glad that we can bond on that. Okay, so for people that are not familiar with your journey, talk to me about like the evolution of how the performance group happened and got started.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually started the company right after I left college with my dad, actually. And so what had happened was I was, went to undergrad at a small school in Virginia called Washington Lee, played football there, had a really great experience. Was actually planning to go work in finance and had done an internship in New York and was planning to go back there and work the next year. Found out about halfway through my senior year of college that the company I was going to go work for actually went out of business. This was right around the time of the great financial crisis. And so then was sort of like, hey, what am I going to do next? And so looked for a job for a little bit and then was talking with my dad. My dad had been sales executive at several different organizations, chief revenue officer at a couple different companies, did IPOs, and said, hey, I'm doing independent consulting. I think we could turn this into a real business. Would you be interested in, trying that? And so we made a deal. We try it for 6 months, see how it went. And here I am, I guess, 16 years later. So it's been a fun journey.
That's amazing. I love it. 6 months turned into 16 years. That's fantastic. So, well, I think it's amazing that like it's something that happened like right out of college. Like that's not like common in terms of people's career path journeys unless they're like lawyers or doctors. So, tell me, first of all, what position did you play?
So I played offensive line. So I played guard. I played guard and center kind of when I was in college.
Yeah, wow, center. I was talking to a friend just last week and I was like, man, I don't think I could handle like someone facing off from me that is like 200, 300 pounds and is like, their job is to like just go through me. Like,
Yeah, it's been a minute. I think now I would also feel that same way. But yeah, I was younger and stronger. So I was younger and stronger then. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I made so many great friends. I made so many great friends playing football in college, and we had a great experience. It was a lot of fun.
I love it. Are you, and so obviously you're still a football fan. Do you mostly follow still NCAA stuff or
Yeah,
professional?
I mean, I mostly follow the University of Georgia, so almost 100% of my fan energy goes into Georgia football, and then whatever limited fan energy is left from a football perspective goes into the Falcons, which is sort of depressing.
Well, and I love that you call it fan energy. I'm gonna have to steal that one from you because I'm in the same boat for sure. So yeah, and George. So what do you think? What's your prediction for Georgia this year?
This year, man, that's hard to call. It's really funny. So a girl that works with me, her name's Hannah, and she was like, "Hey, are you sad that Georgia's having such a bad season?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And she was like, "Well, every time I look on TV and I see them, they're like losing. So like I figured they weren't doing very well." And I was like, "Well, actually, we're doing this exciting thing where we lose until the last 3 to 5 minutes of the game every single week. So I don't think they're going to be national champions. I do think they'll make the playoff. I think they'll probably win a couple playoff games. They are very hard to beat, but also have some talent deficiencies. So I think it's going to be hard for them to ultimately, beat an Ohio State or somebody like that this year. But you never know.
Yeah.
They just keep winning. So we'll see.
Yeah. So, and in your opinion, do you think they're in like a talent growing year, or are there some coaching deficiencies that are needing to be addressed?
Actually, I think they've done a really good job on the coaching front. I think they're young. I mean, they're the youngest team statistically. They're the youngest team in the SEC in terms of just their roster composition. So they're both statistically a young team. They also have a lot of young players playing. So I think that's part of why you see the excitement and variability week to week.
Um, how does your love of sports influence your work? Like, is there crossover in
It's a
terms
great
of
question.
how you
So
go
I
through the
think
book?
that, I mean, I think when I look at our work, a lot of the things that I enjoyed about sports, I also enjoy about work. I enjoy competing. I enjoy being part of a team. I enjoy, working towards a goal. I enjoy, kind of working together to succeed. And I think that a lot of our work, both in terms of our team, but also working with our customers, goes into that same sort of lens and vein. So I think that's a big part of it. I would say also that a lot of the mindset things I think I learned from sports also are very much, kind of ingrained in how we work and influence my work a lot. I think that, you know, in sports, things don't always go the way that you plan. That you start a game, things happen, you've got to be resilient, you've got to adapt, you've got to kind of figure things out as you go. And I think that's also true in running a business. And so I think that has played a huge role in terms of the work that we do with our customers, but also a huge work in terms of like my own personal sort of day to day life.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so let's talk about the business. So your dad was he mostly working for bigger corporations, and then he did private consulting, and then you guys started your thing? Was that
Yes, he actually worked it.
evolution?
Well, so his actual journey is pretty interesting. So he was actually originally an accountant, mostly at big companies. He was a controller for a business unit at GE, and they wanted to move him to their facility in El Paso, Texas. He didn't want to do that, so he wanted to move back home to Atlanta. He went to interview at a company called MSA, Management Science America, which at the time was about $80 million in revenue and was also the world's largest independent software vendor at the time. So IBM was the biggest software company, but they also had hardware. They were the biggest software only company in, I guess, 1986. So he went there to interview, thought he was interviewing for an accounting job. And they were like, "Hey, actually, we don't need any accountants, but we do need people to sell accounting software. Could you be a solution consultant for this accounting software?" And so that's how he got into sales, then worked at several different, mostly young venture backed companies, a company called Datalogics, a company called Brock Control Systems, which was the pre-Siebel, which was the pre-Salesforce, and a company called TR Systems. So worked at several different kind of young software companies that were growing in executive roles, and then after that did sort of independent consulting for a period of time, and then we linked up and started Soar.
I love it. So I'm curious to know, like, what was like, think back to like the early days of like your first 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, what was your hypothesis in terms of like your go-to-market strategy when you first started versus like how has that evolved, and what are the services and products that you're offering today?
Good question. So, how has our strategy evolved? Well, it's evolved in a few ways. So, one is initially, most of our customers were large corporations. We now have kind of a mix of large corporations and mid-sized companies and kind of young scaling companies and practice areas in each one of those. And that's one way in which things have changed quite a bit. I mean, the other way that things have changed quite a bit, just from a go to market view on our side, right, is like we were also just much more limited in what we were doing at that time. I mean, it was predominantly, we first started out, like our selling effort was predominantly like, people my dad knew. And so as we've kind of grown and scaled, we professionalized a lot the way that we go to market. We have a team that's working on business development now. We have, we have partners, we have a much more structured process from how we do outreach. So like it's just, we kind of started in very much a network and network kind of based motion. As we've scaled, we've kind of become much more professionalized. It's the simplest way to describe it. And then from a services perspective, obviously we've continued to expand the number of different services that we have, but also it changed how we package those services for different parts of the market. If you look at the work that we do and the problem that we solve, underlying problem is not so different in a big company or a small company. The way in which it manifests itself, the complexity of solving that problem, how you have to work with the customer to solve that problem, the way in which the customer thinks about that problem is very, very different, as you kind of go up market versus down market. And so, the core principles, the core issues are not really that different, but the way in which they show up and the way in which the solution looks is quite different in a large global enterprise versus a young scaling company. So yeah, that's a lot of the way the portfolio has evolved is really in those ways. Obviously as over the past 16 years, software has also become a much bigger part of the go-to-market motion. So we've integrated our services much more with software, now much more with AI. So that's been the other big thing that's kind of changed is the technical landscape and the depth of integration of our services and our customers' kind of IT stacks and environments. That's become, a much bigger part of the work that we do.
It's cool. So let's talk about like the problems that you're addressing in those corporations for just a moment. So I love how you say, it's like basically the same problem, but how it manifests differs depending on the size of the organization. Like, how would you classify that problem generally? And then how does it show up in a large organization versus a smaller organization?
Yeah, for sure. So if you think about if you kind of break it down to its simplest kind of construct, right? So if you think about sales is about opportunities. So how many opportunities you have, what is the average size of the opportunities, and then what is your win rate? So, and then you can kind of divide that by your cycle time, and that gives you kind of a formula around what is your velocity of selling. And so if you look at just the sales side, right, like that's sort of the underlying problem that everybody is trying to crack is do we have enough opportunities? How do we win bigger opportunities? How do we win them? How do we win them faster? And, how do we kind of reduce and compress the cycle time along the way? So that's kind of the underlying problem that all of our customers are at some level trying to solve for. Now, what does the solution look like is going to be very different in a large global enterprise that has 20,000 sellers, that has a bunch of different go-to-market motions, that has a bunch of different supporting teams. That's going to just inherently look a lot different in terms of like what does that solution look like? It's going to be much more of I'm going to call it a program sitting inside of a large organization of which there are many other programs and initiatives. And so the way that I think about the work that we do is every single chief revenue officer, and I'll talk about customer success in a moment, but every single chief revenue officer, they have a list of 3 to 5 kind of key initiatives that they are pushing out in any given year. And, oftentimes when we work with customers, like we're attached to one of those initiatives or a big part of one of those initiatives. And so, for example, like we're working with one of the world's large technology brands right now around how do they drive a more value-based approach to their go-to-market? How do they do a better job in terms of value selling for their products, their services? How do they do a better job in terms of value delivery on the post-sale side? That's a corporate level initiative that their chief revenue officer, that's one of their top 3 things they're focused on for the year. And there are a ton of different pieces that go into that, a ton of different people. When you think about a smaller company, so a company that is one the other thing they're trying to do is oftentimes they're trying to change and evolve many years of organizational momentum and construct and things that have happened in the past. If you think about the other end of the spectrum where you've got, a younger company, right? In many cases, they are building out their first really uh, programmatic go to market, or they're building out their first sort of formalized go to market approach or strategy or playbook. And so, you know, one is it's a much smaller group of people that are working on it. Oftentimes they're not really having to do a ton of change management in the same way you are in a gigantic organization where we've got 30, 50, however many years of organizational inertia and momentum. So, in the smaller companies, it's much more you can move faster. It's a much smaller group. It's also oftentimes much more pivotal for like the entire company. Whereas if you're working with a gigantic organization, right, you're one initiative among 30 initiatives that they have at an executive level. If you're working at a small company, oftentimes it's, the main thing. And if you think about sort of mid-sized companies, they sort of fit somewhere in between that, right? Like usually they have like a decent number of people that are helping them work on improving go to
Hmm,
market, but they don't have the same size scale. So you have sort of a mix of both.
interesting. You guys help in like a really unique way. Like it's not just product development and it's not sales and it doesn't seem like it's just go to market either. Like it's kind of this interesting blend where like you touch all three to like maximize opportunity. Is it purely is it typically with new product launches, or is it even with, like, increasing efficiencies with existing offerings? Like, what
Yeah,
have
it's a
you
good question. It's a mix of both, right? If you think about if you think about driving like a value based go to market motion, it's definitely a team sport because you got there's input from product, there's input from customer success, there's input from services, there's input from sales, and like oftentimes it's interesting because sometimes we have organizations where it's like, hey, we are moving to a value based motion and that is happening, simultaneously across all of these groups. Sometimes it's like, hey, we start in customer success. Like we have one of our customers that recorded future, they were acquired by MasterCard probably about a year ago. And when they first started, the values kind of focus very much started in customer success and then got pulled back over into sales. And we have other organizations we work with where it starts in sales and then kind of moves the other direction. We have some organizations where it starts at like a product or product marketing kind of layer. And so to your point, it is really interesting because when you think about like how do we, especially in the technology business, how do we effectively convey the value of what we do and do that throughout the life cycle of a customer from the first time we meet them through the time we retain and expand them. That's a big topic that touches a lot of people. And so to your point, like it can be very much a departmental initiative that starts with. Sometimes it can be like a company wide initiative. And so, yeah, to your point, like it definitely touches different parts of the business and that makes it a lot of fun. And that also makes it very transformational.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. So, and you primarily do you primarily work in fintech? Is that where you're primarily working, or is it more
No, it's a
hardware type?
combination of so our verticals. Yeah, it's a great question. Great question. Our primary verticals are application software, fintech, healthcare technology, and then we do have a practice area that's in what I call more traditional industrial businesses. So like one of the world's largest suppliers of lighting is a customer of ours. We have one of the world's largest healthcare companies that does a lot of medical devices, MRI machines, things like that. So we have sort of a mix of verticals that we work with.
That's awesome. I love it. So, well, and I love that you are solving like big problems for big companies. I mean, I don't mean to like make it like sound like elementary, but like it's pretty amazing what you guys have created.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And it's cool. It's cool to see the impact and cool to see the value that we create for our customers is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So is it primarily consulting, or are you like even like embedding experts into the companies that you're working for?
Good question. Yeah, yeah. So it's a combination. Yeah, it's a combination of consulting, kind of embedding with the teams, training, delivery. So it's kind of all of those things. So it's
That's
our
awesome.
business is a mix of consulting. Our business is a mix of both consulting and training, and delivery. And so there's an element to a lot of this where our customers are needing to figure this out. And then there becomes an element where it's like, hey, now we've got to really enable change, help make sure that everybody can do this. And so it's kind of a mix of both the consulting advisory and training piece.
I love that. And what are some of your big initiatives for 2026? What's on the horizon for
Great
you guys?
question. We're working on that right now. I'll have a better answer for you in a couple months, but big things. So big things for us overall, right? One is continuing to in our product portfolio and continue to embed that both in terms of the way that we deliver to customers, but also like our internal ways of working. I think that's probably everybody's like number one thing for whether we know what we're doing or not. That's all of our number one things. Then the second one is we think about top of funnel. We have a lot of strong partnerships with folks that sell to the same folks that we sell to, so continuing to deepen and activate those partnerships is a big piece. And then we've also added several folks to the team over the past year, so continuing to ramp them and make sure they're really productive. And then the last one is more of a continue than anything else, but making sure we really do a great job delivering value for our customers and that we're doing all the right things to help ensure that happens. Because in our business, it's probably not a lot different than your business, right? Like it's most important thing is helping your customers be successful. If you do that, you'll get an opportunity to do more things.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, since you created this from the beginning, there's so many balls to hold in the air between
Yeah, yeah, and that
acquisition,
doesn't really change,
partner.
right? Like I
Yeah,
think I think you kind of think I think that I was at a meeting earlier this week at a fund that I invest in, and they had like their kind of partner meeting, and they brought in a bunch of different C-level people, and they talked about they were on a panel, and so Doug Robinson, who used to be the president of Workday, was up there, and he was like, "Yeah, I had this I think he called it strategic role fallacy, where he was like, "Yeah, I keep thinking that like the next role I'm going to be in, I'm going to get to be more strategic." And I think as a business owner, you kind of end up thinking, right, like, "Hey, as the business grows, as we add people, as we mature, like I'm going to be able to be more strategic." And like what my learning has been thus far has been like, yeah, that is true to some extent, but like largely you still have to do quite a bit to, keep the business running and make sure that everything is moving in the right direction and be in the detail on things. And so I would say like, I keep thinking like, oh yeah, as we grow to the next phase, like I'm going to be able to be more strategic or spend more time on these things. And what I found is like, it's actually, as we continue to grow, that is less true than originally anticipated.
Yeah, that's like one of my fears is I like have a hope for that, but every time I fix something where I feel like I'm spending too much time in this area,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. There's
like
some new
something
thing that
else
it's like,
just fills that
exactly. There's
space and you're
some
like,
new thing. Yeah. 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 I think that's just part of the experience.
yeah. Yeah, no,
But that's also what makes it fun.
absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Okay, so you talked about AI briefly for just a moment. One of the things I like to ask guests is like what industry trends are impacting their business, and like lately, 10 times out of 10, it's been AI.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're compelled to answer that. But yeah, I think everyone is compelled to answer that at this point. So yes.
Just say AI because it's the
Yeah,
only
yeah,
right answer at this point. So, and I think that it sounds like with your business, there's so many opportunities in every area of your business to use AI, whether it's in sales or in
yeah,
delivery or in retention. Like there's a lot of, and because you work in tech, my guess is you probably have access to a lot of the cutting edge technologies that are coming out as well, I would imagine. Yeah.
yeah, 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 for sure. At least awareness of them for sure.
So is there an aspect of AI that like has you nervous or perplexed or like something where you're like,
Nervous or perplexed? That's a good question. Well, I think like in general, right? Like none of us really know kind of where it's headed, what it's going to do, to what it like. Nobody really knows, right? Like we just don't really know what it's going to be capable of. And so it's a little tricky as you're kind of thinking about, or as we're thinking about, what are our plans for next year, 2 years out, 3 years out? Like I think we're in kind of an interesting period where you really can't plan all that far ahead as far as like what is the technology going to be able to do, and in turn with that, like what should we do with this technology? And so
mhm,
I would say the thing that's tricky about it for me as I think about it as a leader is we're sort of in this interesting place where there's a cool set of capabilities today. We've got to figure out how do we make the most of the capabilities that we have today without knowing sort of like what's going to be coming around the corner. And that's, I think, a little bit different than I think that's a little bit different. I mean, there's probably periods of time with like the internet and maybe some other things where like this was true, but I think this is true just based on the speed things are moving. I think this is true in a different way for this particular evolution than some of the other tech shifts in the past. So I think the thing that I think the thing that creates pause or uncertainty for me as a leader, right, is it's a little tricky to figure out like how do we skate to where the puck is going when the puck is going maybe somewhere wildly different than anybody really knows. Yeah, so it's like that part I think is tricky. And I think the other part is tricky is sort of how do we split out or separate or sort of understand like what's really happening with AI and what is kind of like myth. And so I think just that's all
mm.
sorting through that and like what's really applicable. I think is a second thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's super insightful, and really true, and it's something that I'm thinking about a lot. I mean, how you mentioned like other technologies, they're improving. Like I've heard like stats where like it's doubling every so many years, like how typically technology operates. Whereas like with AI, it's like doubling every 18 months, or like 10xing every
Yeah,
8.
yeah, or I
It's
think even faster than that. Like it's the pace at which it's evolving in terms of what it can do is just tremendous.
Yeah. And so you're right. And I love that analogy that you use of like, like as a leader, you kind of you're almost expected to like have this crystal ball, like skate to where the puck's going, but it's like puck's going to be in like a different arena before you even skate to where you think it's going to go.
Yeah, yeah. We may not even be skating after a puck. We may be like, I don't know, doing some other thing like, maybe we're actually playing the completely wrong sport. So like, who knows? But yes,
Yeah, no, it's an interesting journey, but I think it's a fun time to be a part of it. And I think the uncertainty is it's an interesting leveler as well, right? Because like it's not like some
for
people
sure.
know and the rest of us are trying to figure it out. It's like we're all like, we'll see.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so interesting. I love it. Okay, well this has been like seriously such a great conversation, and so excited to be having this with you, And John, I love your story and everything that you brought to the table today, and just your journey. And I think it also is a testament to me of like, I think a lot of times when they get into the business journey, they jump ship with things, and it's very evident, like with you, like sticking to this with your dad, doing it for 16 years, like look at like what you guys have been able to build, right? Like doing anything for 16 years. It doesn't matter whether it's like playing a sport, building a business, whatever, like you're going to get better at it. It's going to grow, it's going to change. And so I just think it's been really cool to like talk to you and get a taste of what you guys are all about. So thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, happy to do it. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, it's fun to reflect on sort of where we've been and where we're going, and really grateful for the opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah, I love it. So for people that want to follow your journey or get in touch with your company and get more information, where can they find you?
So, yeah, if LinkedIn. So if you look me up, if you type in John Thackston on LinkedIn, there's not too many other John Thackstons. I'll probably be the first one. So LinkedIn, if you go to our website as well. So LinkedIn website, easiest places to keep up with us. And like I said, really appreciate you having us, and hopefully this will be valuable for the listeners.
I love it. Yeah, I know that it has been. So guys, I'm going to list those links directly in the episode notes so you can click out to them and get in touch and or ask more questions or connect in whatever way you feel like it. Anyway, it's been seriously so good having you. And guys, for those of you that have listened, we know that your time is valuable. So for you to spend some moments with us just means the absolute world. So again, thank you so much, John, and thank you guys for listening. And we'll see you next time on the Marketing Matrix.
Thanks, Lisanne.